Dr. Lee. Thank you so
Oh,
much for your lecture.
good to see you.
Yeah, good to see you. We appreciated the content so much, and we were able to collect questions from last week.
Excellent.
And so, the first question we wanted to ask was after Korea was originally divided into two at the 38th parallel due to ideological conflict, there are more nations that were divided into two. And so, how does the division of the Korean Peninsula affect the subsequent policies of the USA and Soviet Union, or Democratic side and Communist side?
Yeah, that's an excellent question and a really big question. And let's just try to be, succinct. And as you know, that division of Korea has happened in 1945 in order to, contain the communism from Soviet Union, the 38th parallel. So it was a hectic moment, but it led to the Korean War. That's another similar curvious line of division, the Korean DMZ. So it's 1950. So original division 1945 was significant, but but not really many people cares. Who cares? So it's a just small country in the tip of the Asian continent, and not many people saw the significance. But from that moment of hot war, uh, although it's a Cold War area, it was a regional hot war, a Korean War, actually major communists, Russian, Chinese, and North Korean forces fought together with the democratic forces based on United Nations, as you know. So it ended an armistice, the just ceasefire. No peace was achieved. But as you know, the two Koreas formally achieved 1948. Uh, and in 1949, two Germanys are established, East and West Germany. And in case of Germany, they didn't have any civil war. And then many East Germans are more likely to know what's going on outside because of geopolitical differences. In Korea, North Korean, surrounded by sea and capped by Russia and China, the northern border. Very unfortunate geopolitical situation of North Korea, but East Germany, the people, much easier access to the freer world and more information. That's why probably there are many other reasons, but the two Germanys can be reunified more peacefully and easily in in 1990. And then there's another division that is Vietnam. In 1954, the initial Vietnam War, but the hot war really began in 1965 and then ended 1975, and it was won by communists, as you know. So the two countries, Germany and Vietnam, all in all, reunified, but not Korea, still not finished. There's another small case is different. It's like a Taiwan. So Taiwan was sort of unfinished civil war between Chinese Communist Party, the current one, and Kuomintang forces, hotly fought in between 1945, 1949. The remnants of Kuomintang, Chiang Kai-shek forces, fled to Taiwan and lived there, for the last 70 or more years. So it is unfinished civil war, still a lot of potential for another, catastrophic, war conflict. That's another sort of division or divided situation. And as you see, there's a Yemen. There's a North Yemen and South Yemen. There are conflict in the 70s, ended it in 1990. So that is another division and unification. But if I can add, another one is Cyprus. That is different historical context. It's divided by Greece and Turkey. There's a regional conflict based on religious kind of strife. but there's different context. So significance of Korean division is, permeating throughout the Cold War era, as we discussed the last lecture. A lot of, conflicts, casualties, and regional war, civil war happened until 1991 when Soviet Union dissolved. But still, we cannot see the peace. Although United States proclaimed sort of Pax Americana, there's American peace after Soviet dissolution, but that we're going to talk about next lecture. But as you know, there are a lot of uh, conflicts even during the Pax Americana, but I guess much lesser degree, much lesser casualties based on the Cold War era. Of course, the Cold War era is better than World War One and World War Two in terms of death and casualties. It was millions at the time. But anyway, peace is not in our hand. And then division of 38th parallel has much more significance. And not many people know about that because remember the first lecture I was talking about Korean people's founding principle that 경천애인 and 홍익인간, that is live your heaven and love your people, and 홍익인간, living for the sake of others, benefit to humanity at large. I don't think any other countries have such founding principle. So that it is not just ordinary people, but the ruling elites, even the king, have such a philosophy of living for the sake of others, its own people. So it's a great philosophy the Korean people have, preserved for at least 5 or more millennia. But it is a little different situation in Asia that the Chinese people have a sort of Sinocentric view of their founding principle. Whenever China unified its own continent, they call it a Sinocentrism. So everything else or any other neighboring countries are inferior to superior Chinese centrism. That's kind of now still persisting. So maybe I can talk about it later. So, but in case of 30th parallel, the northern part of 30th parallel is North Korea, but actually is a center of Dangun Joseon that and Goguryeo, that having the founding principle of 경천애인 and 홍익인간. So that area of Goguryeo, North Korea, and the Manchuria, that was Gojoseon's territory. And actually, the first Chinese kingdom, uh, Jin Jin Shi Huang, established in BC second, and he established the Great Wall, the in a, the biggest, longest wall that he established, uh, because he thought that that is the area that he needs protection from the northern forces, really stronger physically and stronger culturally. The Gojoseon, Goguryeo, and Mongolia, and the other people up there. So that's why Jin dynasty. So that's why the Jin is originated China. Jin Shi Huang means Shi means origin, Huang means the emperor. So Jin dynasty China, Jin. Anyway, to make long story a little shorter, so 30th parallel is such a significance that such an founding principle of 경천애인 and 홍익인, it's not just ordinary people's principle, ruling elites, king's principle, ruling for the sake of its own people, not at the expense of its own people. Of Sinocentrism, for instance, is all at the expense at the expense of its own people and at the expense of the neighboring countries. So, so that I really hope that the 38th parallel has a significant meaning to regain that founding principle of living for the sake of others. North Korea is suppressed by some kind of uh, satanic forces, and especially 38th parallel also have the Christianity was suppressed. The Wonsan revival and you know the Pyongyang was a center of Christianity in the early 20th century is effectively suppressed by communism. So 38th parallel is not just division of two Koreas. It's a huge implication and significance of reviving that two founding principle that I talked about that blended with four major teachings of the world. So yeah, so I'd like to, make it as a conclusion. So such a significance of 30th parallel, right?
Thank you so much for sharing on that and yeah, sharing on the significance of the Korean situation, especially yeah, with its history and founding principles.
Yeah,
Thank you so much. And speaking of the 38th parallel, actually, our second question is what is the significance of the US government seeing the DMZ as a line instead of a zone?
that's a very good question again, because, you know, as a superpower, the policymakers, the globe and the map, the world map, they're trying to see the geographical area as a line. As you know, I'm not surprised as a line because remember the second lecture about Atchison line to contain the communist threat. So Japanese and the Philippines and so on and so forth. So it's a line. So I'm not really blaming in that regard, but there's a Korean War uh, because of some miscalculation by both sides of communist side and democratic side. There's there's a reciprocal miscalculations of the the threats. So you know actually Russia and Soviet Union did not expect the U.S. will participate in such a shortest notice or in a quick manner. And General MacArthur did not expect Chinese involvement. A lot of miscalculation. And then finally, the containment was achieved in 1953 through the DMZ. Uh, so, so is an area of 2.5 miles north and south and 155 miles east and west. So 4 kilometers by 250 kilometers. Obviously, is a zone, an area to me living, but why is a line? Because it's a containment line still, containing communists for during the Cold War, Cold World War, because especially the Korean Peninsula is bordered with the Chinese, the, the one of the big communist forces, and Russia is the tip of the Korean Peninsula, is a link to North Korea. Although major part of the border is Chinese border, but on the tip there's a Russian border. So actually, Chinese territory did not go through the East Sea because it's blocked by Russia. And the Chinese government did not like that anyway. So all in all, so U.S. policies in the last from after the Korean War and until Soviet Union's dissolution in 1991 is a containment line. And then after that is it is sort of called into deterrence line. So after the communism collapsed, uh, United States want to deter North Korean threat in terms of deter of North Korean nuclear threat. So that's the big difference. Communism is sort of collapsed and sort of mutated into a dictatorship, one-man dictatorship in all in Russia, China, and North Korea. So it's a different kind of dictatorship. So nuclear weapons are a major issue that U.S. want to deter North Korea from developing it. But by the end of 2020, it failed. The deterrence line policy failed. And by the early 2024, most policymakers, US policymakers and experts now openly agree that US policy failed to deter North Korean uh, nuclear weapons development. So now North Korea is regarded as a uh, kind of not in public, but as a nuclear weapons state. So, so, so now why the uh, the U.S. see the DMZ as a line is a containment line and as a deterrence line of not developing nuclear weapons, but unfortunately it failed. But there's a misunderstanding and miscalculation by U.S. again because North Korea's nuclear policy from during the Korean War 1950 is a consistent, strategically consistent of developing nuclear weapons is their must. They have never discarded such policy, although they may think about delaying the nuclear weapons, delaying developing nuclear weapons, not all discarding the project at all. So I can talk about that later, but that's kind of naive uh, thinking by the U.S. that North Korea will, you know, terminate its nuclear weapons project. But North Korea, since Korean War, 1960s when China developed nuclear weapons. And as a dictator, Kim Il-sung, the nuclear weapons are a must. When Saddam Hussein and Gaddafi was killed by Western powers, you know, nuclear weapons are a must. When Ukraine was attacked by, Russia, similar symptoms, nuclear weapons are a must. So that there's such a notion by North Korea. So in terms of DMs as a line, it's about time the US should begin to see the line as a zone, an area, and then think about some other policies more creatively. So that's already happening now, even in the Biden administration. So Biden administration is kind of people who like to see the world as a line, many lines containing Chinese military power. There's a many, you know, rectangular lines, triangle lines, there are a chain of islands to contain. Anyway, so, but we'll see. The DMG as a zone should be regarded as a precious one. And then is kind of linchpin, the body part of linchpin, so that we'll talk about that more later. So that's why you see the DMs as a line. Wishful thinking of containing communism and deterring North Korean nuclear weapons. Yep,
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think that gave us a lot of insight into why the US government sees it as a line, but the importance of seeing it as a zone and its impact even with nuclear development in North Korea.
that's right.
And continuing with thinking from, I guess, yeah, the US government and its involvement, our third question is if the US government officially responded positively to the Peace Park proposal, would this be enough for the park to be fully established?
That's another good question linked to the first one. So that means that the U.S. government now begin to see the DMs as a zone. So at least as a zone and trying to engage North Korea. So the U.S. kind of reaction in positive way to the peace proposal is a very, very important initial step toward, peace park. But in order to have a peace park in the region, we need to have some security measures of that area. So we call it UN peace zone. So entire zone it could be expanded more than 4 kilometers north and south current because in South Korea there's an area called civilian control zone just below the formal DMZ. That means there's a military buffer zone, another zone that the civilians, South Korean civilians cannot go through there. There's some areas 12 kilometers below DMZ is a diverse area, 5 kilometers and 2 kilometers below. So depending on policies, we can add more areas. As a UN peace zone, it's up to the two governments. But that is the initial step. The US see the line, not the line as a zone, but obviously we need to get an approval from North Korea. The northern half is occupied by North Korean government, and that means that U.S. North Korea peace treaty is the next step. Otherwise, North Korea will not be willing to give up. It's a demilitarized zone because actually in the demilitarized zone there is a there are thousands of artilleries that without any missile, involvement, they can make the Seoul, at least area, metro area, a sea of fire. That was, in 1990s even, because at the time, not many missiles, no nuclear weapons really deployed in 1990s. Still, that was a huge threat. Thousands of artilleries, they can, you know, reach the Seoul metro. It's not just a joke that when they said that they can make Seoul a sea of fire. So that is within the DMZ area. So they gotta remove that artilleries, to meet the peace zone agreement. That means U.S. North Korea kind of diplomatic ties should be, begun. At least liaison offices between Pyongyang and Washington. That was about to happen in the end of 2000 when Clinton was the president, and Clinton was about to visit Pyongyang, uh, but he couldn't because of delayed calculation of the presidential election ballots at the time. That the Al Gore and the George Bush's, the election is delayed because of the problems of the calculating ballots. That somehow, scrapped the Clinton's visit. That was most unfortunate uh, moment that I'm going to talk about later. So anyway, so that such a U.S. DPRK political kind of detente and diplomatic ties are necessary, along with economic sort of cooperation between South and North Korea and U.S. And North Korea is very much willing to get help from U.S. You know that North Korea's consistent policy is to having nuclear weapons. Another consistent policy is having good relations with the United States. Isn't it interesting? But the US want North Korea as a non-nuclear state. That makes problems. But North Korea has a long-standing wish having good relations with the United States because fundamentally North Korea having an innate threat from Russia and China historically. Russia and China is nowadays the only two countries that can attack North Korea. That's North Korean thinking internally. Although, propaganda in the North Korean propaganda, there's an anti-American, American imperialism to their own people and their propagandistic machine. But in a circle of ruling elites of North Koreans, they want nuclear weapons to secure their regime from China and Russia. And they want United States to develop their economies. But it is not really mixed well, as you can imagine. But hopefully in the next years, whoever, with the next president, Trump or Biden, and I think Trump will be more likely to follow that kind of steps of, rather than Biden. But whoever will be, change will be really necessary because North Korea has already developed nuclear weapons, 50 or more. There will be 100 nuclear warheads in the next few years, and ICBM, intercontinental ballistic missiles, is almost done. They just need a testing to South Pacific, like a regular angle. They already finished with the different angle to the upward and coming down, so that before reaching that moment, U.S. and North Korea should think about new kind of resetting their policies that North Korea really wanted. Yeah, actually, U.S. should think about in a more practical way. Yeah, that's it. Yeah.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I think we could hear more about what it takes to realize the peace part, but also the unique position the US is in with relation to North Korea and the potential relationship that can really develop there. Thank you for sharing on that. And yeah, for our next question, this is actually related to your Zoom background, but we noticed that in the photo of the DMZ in your Zoom background, one area is circled in yellow, and we were wondering what that circle meant or if there was any importance for that area.
Yeah, so I, purposely developed that background, images, and there's there's a cranes, red crowned cranes flying, across the DMZ barbed wire, and then it landed, in North Korean rice fields, and then there's the fields and mountains in the DMZ, and the Korean map, the DMZ map, actually DMZ as an area, as a diverse, and geographically diverse kind of plantations, different styles. So eastern area is a very mountainous area, so-called Tabac Sanmek, so mountainous kind of backbone of Korean Peninsula. So backbone like a tiger's backbone. So Korean Peninsula is symbolized as tiger, as the 1988 Summer Olympics mascot is tiger, as you may know. So Korean Peninsula is kind of symbolized even in North Korea as a two, front leg, claw is kind of holding China. This kind of map show that. So that anyway, so DMZ eastern part is very mountainous areas, so that many UNESCO biosphere specialists wanted to make the eastern part of DMZ as an absolute conservation area. It's an area where Mountain Kumgang in North Korea and Mountain Sorak, South Korea is merged, that area. So two mountains are actually both a UNESCO World Heritage Site, still considering. But UNESCO has wanted to consider the mixture of Mountain Sorak, Mountain uh, Kumgang as a mixture as UNESCO World Heritage. So that is already discussed, and UNESCO already agreed, if North and South Korea government agreed to submit. Anyway, so that's why many environmentalists, ecologists circle the area, absolute conservation area. So must be. So scientific discovery. So how did the nature has been regenerated by self after total devastation by human beings. So a lot need to be studied and discovered. That's why it's an absolute conservation area. And then in the middle area is more likely kind of ecotourism. You know that red-crowned cranes and white-naped cranes, there's a migratory birds, they're nesting area, stopover areas in the DMZ. So that there's a crane observatory is already there, so it can be expanded. And more than that, there should be a memorial for all the soldiers who died, friends and foes. And if you know that Korean War is stalemated for 2 years in that line, so a lot of, you know, casualties, death, so still buried. Yeah, so the area itself should be a memorial itself because for 2 years, thousands of soldiers fighting to get one mountain after one other and fought back and day and night, and even one famous mountain called Baekma San, so White Horse Mountain, because too many bombardment, areas is kind of whitewashed the mountains, so that the memorial site is in the middle, and along with some kind of cultural preservation, because the exact area is 4 kilometers is one kingdom of Goryeo dynasty is exactly within that uh, DMZ. That was a kind of amazed. Many historians said it exactly is in the uh, DMZ area in the middle of the Korean Peninsula. I mean DMZ. So that is also another area. So western part of DMZ is could be considered more likely activities like UN Fifth Office that we considering, educational facilities, hospitals, many, playing grounds, and so on and so forth. So that's kind of projects that the DMZ Forum has been designed that I can talk about with more pictures later. So that's why Eastern part is absolute conservation area. That's why we have a circle there.
Ah, thank you. Now, whenever we see your background, we'll know what it means, what it signifies.
Okay.
Ah, thank you so much. And our last question for today that we wanted to ask is, do you think it's possible for us to experience a similar situation to the height of the Cold War now? For example, having proxy wars with China.
Yeah, I think the Cold War is kind of harshest in many areas of the world. Global Cold War, many civil wars. Uh, so it's kind of, subsided. And after the dissolution of Soviet Union, not much conflict really happened. And but as you know that the the Russia is trying to regain its power as a greater Russia by Putin, and it invaded Georgia 2008 and Crimea 2014 and 2022 Ukraine. So Ukraine war is sort of uh, proxy war by NATO and the US because US supported, but not direct involvement in the Ukraine war. But NATO is kind of forefront of the war, and a lot of the aid come from European nations. And then, unlike Putin's expectation, more NATO countries join. Sweden and Finland, the longest border countries of Russia, is join NATO. And so that is kind of a real trouble. Uh, a different type of proxy wars kind of started by Russia. So another kind of, it's not really proxy war, but another war potential area is Taiwan, similar to Ukraine. Uh, you know, Chinese has aspiration to reunify Taiwan and sort of unfinished civil war in 1949, uh, partly due to the Korean War that happened in 1950. The Chinese involvement Korean War has delayed. A lot of problems within China. So now China became big power, big economic power, so that they're now thinking about, suppressing, Xinjiang area in the sort of chicken's tail. Uh, some people see the map of China as a chicken or hen, looks like. So tail area of Xinjiang and the chicken's, bottom area like Tibet is so much suppressed. Even though they're not really Sino-centrist area, because Tibet is, before Qing dynasty, it was a separate nation. Uh, the Ming dynasty, you know, Tibet and Xinjiang is not part of China, but Manchurian Qing dynasty expanded Xinjiang and Tibet, but the current China trying to maintain, and even Inner Mongolia, there are a lot of suppression. The Mongols trying to be independent up to the end of Qing dynasty, but a lot of suppression in the border areas, and that has been almost done. And one of the areas is sort of the Taiwan is the great issue that uh, hopefully we can talk about it more later. So that we're going to watchful for the idea of Chinese dream that she mentioned, Jungkook Mong, Chinese dream. But it's not like American dream. Americans have a dream of having her own housing and children and full life. Not like American dream. So don't kind of interpret that way. Chinese dream is like a Chinese state dream based on Chinese ruling elite at the expense of majority of Chinese people. That Chinese dream that she mentioned, not even considering their own people, not 90% of their own people, suppression, suppression of their own people by so-called cyber dictatorship. Digital, uh, now the digital police state is every Chinese, uh, humans, the citizens are captured, AI technologies. So the government knows every citizen's, their past, what regulations they violate and everything. So they kind of make the credit rating, not like credits in the U.S. you know, really dangerous move by Chinese dream. So the Xi also proclaimed 일대일로, that is one belt, one road. It's not for the sake of other people like Hong Gan. benefit humanity at large. It's for the Chinese interest. One belt, one road. So that many, countries in Asia and Africa now realize that, oh, we mistook the Chinese intention of that huge investment by China. Anyway, that's kind of a new challenge that the democratic nations, freedom, need to focus on in the next 2 or 3 decades until she is kind of natural life expense because she is now expected rule China until his death. That's unlike Deng Xiaoping's China. There's a collective leadership. 10 years, 10 years, 10 years. The leader should be changed after Deng Xiaoping, after Mao, 1976. But she just changed the rule last year that he can maintain his rule for the rest of his life, just like Kim Jong-un in North Korea and Putin in Russia. I think he can extend it 10 or more years in many ways. So that we gotta expect this kind of new generation of dictatorship, personal dictatorship with more kind of shrewd mind, with new technologies and nuclear weapons, unlike Hitler, the Mao, and Stalin era. So much more dangerous figures in our horizon in the next decades. So that we have much to talk about. So that that's very dangerous situation in coming years, within 5 years. So hopefully we'll discuss more. We need much more wisdom from young people and disseminating these ideas to general people, so and policymakers, and hope that this kind of discussion will influence more people in the US and other democratic-minded people in the Western world, as well as general people in Russia, China, and North Korea. I really hope so. Thank you. I'll finish by this.
Thank you so much. Yeah, thank you for sharing about the current world situation and what we face. It's very important to know, and yeah, we look forward to learning more.
All right.
Yeah, thank
Great.
you so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, and these were all our questions for today. So we look forward to our next session with you. Thank you so much.